Hello, everyone. It's Fred again from Notes of a Nomad. Video number 100. Wow, didn't think I'd get that far so quickly. Today, I have a big question for us, and maybe you can help me with some answers, because I certainly don't profess to know the answers to this problem. So here's what I have. I do have a question for you near the end, and maybe if you know something about an answer or you've experienced it, you could share it with me and I would share it with others. I'm going to outline some problems, and recently I've been talking to a few friends and people that I know, and there's a lot of issues in the world and I don't know the answers. I remember when I was younger, I said, I never learned some of the most important things that I need to know to become an adult. One is how to become a good spouse. I knew nothing about that. And also, what about how to be a good parent? And we sort of learn from maybe what happened to us when we were young, or we watched our parents. So we see how they reacted and we follow along because we don't know any different to how we were treated when we were young or watched our parents in action. So I've often said, there must be a better way. Where should we learn this? Well, I know we didn't learn it in school. So some of the challenges that are happening, there's a lot of dysfunction in the world, high divorce rates, family violence, and even abuse, money problems and money challenges, causing a lot of stress for everyone, young and old, anxiety, depression, even mental illness, addiction. These are some of the coping mechanisms that people use, and this is pretty rampant. Just look at the homeless problems in many countries around the world, even including these rich countries like those in North America. It's quite amazing and outstanding and a challenge. And I don't think there's any easy solution that fits. How do we cope and how do we learn to cope and where do we learn this? In some cases, there are countries that have done some wonderful approaches that, for example, I think in Portugal, they've done some changes that have helped the drug addictions that have been a big impact. Homelessness, I think in some of the Scandinavian countries, they have some approaches that have been very or relatively successful compared to some other countries. And I don't know the answers, but I suspect there's probably no one solution that solves all of these problems, but it is rampant. It's quite amazing. Just in recent discussions, people telling me about how dysfunctional their childhood was in their family, etc. Some of the things that happen to them that impact them and cause them a lot of problems. And how do we learn how to cope with this rather than the school of hard knocks, which some of us cope well, some of us go down the wrong direction. Alcoholism is quite rampant, etc. And it's not getting any better. I don't know the answer. I'll give you one example of an approach of a person that I've heard about and read about. And I think his approach isn't the answer to everything, but it's something that he's doing. And it's a fellow by the name, an Australian farmer, actually. I think he was and still is to a large extent. Scott Pape, known as the Barefoot Investor. Now, he wrote a book in the early 2000s called The Barefoot Investor after a wildfire destroyed his farm and most of his belongings, all sorts of things and family mementos. And they had basically nothing after the wildfire. And he wrote the book, The Barefoot Investor, which he thought maybe he'd sell 20,000 copies, which is a bestseller. But to date, it's sold over 2 million copies. And it is in more than one country now. Though it was based in Australia, it is now in many other countries, including, I believe it's in Mandarin. So he has some very great techniques on how to help people when they have challenges, particularly financial challenges, which what he faced. and his family faced after the wildfire burnt down their farm. And some of the things he's doing, he's written another book, not only The Barefoot Investor, but one that really resonated with me called The Barefoot Investor for Families. And with that, he has some great approaches to teach children key elements that they should learn about credit cards and saving money and how to find a job and how to cook, because that's something we should learn before we're an adult. And he has family, like on, I think it was on a Sunday, the children would help cook the meal, etc. And they would have discussions and they would talk about different things. And that book I found very enlightening, a book I wish I had when I was a parent, because there were some approaches there that I think would have helped my children enormously. But I wasn't aware, and I did, I guess, what the best I knew, and I didn't know much. So he's also, Scott Pape has gone further. He's got what's called the Barefoot Money Movement, where he's promoting financial education to students in Australia, and I believe in other countries now in the world. I think Brazil has approached him, and he's done some experience in some place in Brazil to teach youngsters money management, because there are a lot of challenges in the world. I mean, there's a lot of things that are thrown at us, including credit cards, and even cell phones can become addictive. How do we cope with the addiction that a cell phone can cause? And money, how do we learn these things? Well, he has the Barefoot Money Movement, which is a program for students to learn about financial. And so I would highly recommend, if you want to learn anything, look up Scott Pape, and if you have children, look at his Barefoot Investor for Families. He is not a person who has gone into helping people invest, so to speak, and made a lot of money out of that. He's become a counselor, a financial counselor, which is a free service in Australia. You may hear Rupert in the background. He's getting hungry. I'm looking after Rupert. If you know, hey, Rupert, come here, just to see who Rupert is, because you may have forgotten. This is Rupert, and he's hungry, so he wants me to feed him. So with that, I would ask you the question, what approaches have you seen or heard that can help solve some of these dysfunctional problems in the world that are causing, depression and addiction and homelessness? A lot of it, we don't know what to do when we face these problems, and there's no place to learn it at the moment. And maybe you've seen, and I've heard as well of some other instances where even teachers have done some miraculous things, but it's not the norm. These are little pockets. But maybe if you know of an example of someone who has helped educate us, even if youngsters in particularly, so they know by the time they become an adult what they could do to cope, please let me know. Say, hey, I've got this, I saw this example, and maybe we can share those examples of what has been done, and maybe it'll help some people cope and solve some of the dysfunctional problems that we're seeing in the world today, because it's becoming more and more rampant. So with that, I gotta go feed Rupert, and I'll say adios, au revoir, wishing you, your family and friend, lots of love and laughter until next time. Bye for now from Fred and Notes of a Nomad.